G'day guys, up next I've got Doug Turnure. Doug is in charge of managing all user feedback for the TFS and Visual Studio teams at Microsoft. So he uses this tool called User Voice. It's a great tool that we can all use for our software projects. And you'll get to see how he manages and reorganizes all the content and what we're going to see in future versions. So let's take a look. Alright, so Doug, what do you do?
I do feedback and early adoption for Visual Studio.
And I know you run the User Voice site.
I do the User Voice sites,
the
Connect site, and yep.
Cool. So before you get onto that, I'd like to know a little bit about your history. You know, what you did in the early days, what brought you to the Visual Studio team.
Let's see. Prior to this team, I had a short stint in developer audience marketing, but I spent most of my career at Microsoft as a developer evangelist. And prior to that, I did a lot of software training, primarily through a company named Developmentor, who had a big heyday in the 90s and early 2000s.
If you remember, that's when we first met, when you took
Indeed.
my wife out for a whole day.
That's right, I forgot, I was you. I was a surrogate you for a day.
That's right, I trusted you.
Yes.
All right, so after Developmentor, then what?
To Microsoft, where I've been for 8 years now.
8 years?
Mm-hmm.
And where did you start?
Before that,
No,
at Microsoft in Atlanta.
Team?
I was in Atlanta as an evangelist,
Oh,
so I covered the southeastern United States. Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
and then you came to Corp.
I came 2.5, 3 years ago, yeah.
Okay, straight to the Visual Studio team?
Nope, that was my stint in developer audience marketing. I did about 1.5 years there, and I've been here just under 1.5 years.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so what are you doing now? Do you want to...
Well, now that we have kicked off Visual Studio vNext, we are aggressively looking at feedback. Right now it's on a daily basis. We're watching Connect, User Voice, and whatever trends up on Twitter and other places.
So you're watching it all?
We are watching it all. I actually watched the keynote with 2 Twitter feeds sitting on each side, one for people I knew and one for words. So I literally was rapidly taking notes and compiling it, and so when people are twittering, I'm watching it.
And so what, did you get any interesting feedback, good or
We've
bad?
got lots of it. It's been good, and I think people can see this if they go out and look. You know, every time we do a release, we get different kinds of feedback, but certainly there's just been a lot of positive feedback. And I don't say that as a marketing guy. It really has been very positive.
I know. I was at Build. It's a lot of high-fiving.
Yeah.
I didn't hear anything negative in the whole Build conference. Everyone was so excited.
Yeah, there's always some negative, but it's been remarkably, I mean, we've been very pleased.
So tell me, which pieces of features and functionality were people calling out as this rocks?
JavaScript IntelliSense.
Oh, is that?
Everybody loves that.
Back to the basics, right?
Yeah. Performance. I'm going to be curious about performance as we get into bigger projects, but performance has been a popular one as well. And
were people freaked out about having to reopen their C++ books?
You know, I think actually people were happy about it.
Really?
The C++ audience has responded. I mean, they've been pretty excited that they feel like they're, you know, back up on top of the food chain again.
Right.
So I think they're pretty happy about that.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
All right, so do you want to talk about User Voice? Probably the most visible part of your job.
Yeah, there are 2 primary public channels that we use to gather feedback, which is Connect and User Voice. User Voice is the new kid on the block. To put those in comparison briefly, Connect is where we like for you to file bugs. Connect has had a long life. I can talk about that in a little bit, but User Voice is where we're looking for ideas. And User Voice is not a Microsoft property, it's a third-party company.
That was an unusual decision.
It was, but you know what? Most technology things, for lack of a better word, eventually commoditize. I mean, typically, you build your own something, and then eventually it gets commoditized to where you want to write someone a check for $10 a month and use it, kind of a thing. And you know, the User Voice guys, they've done a nice job.
They have.
And honestly, I've been pleased with their site.
So you kicked off User Voice. What was what was your first impression of the feedback? Which one rose to the top and go, wow, that's at the top?
Performance. The number 1 was performance. Number 2 is performance, although it's a slightly different incantation of performance. I think number 4 was performance. and number 17.
So I'm looking at your screen now. It doesn't say performance on top.
No, the way user voice works, they have two sorting algorithms. They have hot ideas and top ideas. Top is most voted, hot is what's currently getting bumped.
Right.
And you can see the top one on there, or the hot one right now, is support C++ 11 features.
And so that happened after build.
Yeah,
obviously.
so since build, there's been an aggressive push by the C++ community.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But if I switch over to top, which I will do now,
right.
it'll actually, you'll see
there we go.
Performance.
Performance.
And actually, this has been really good because one of the things we struggled with was, people will go in and comment on a blog and say something that, causes a lot of stir for us, but it's one user that got on a blog. With user voice, they auto sort, and so as a result, we find out what, somebody may be very angry, but if they're the only person in the world feeling that, I mean, it's not that we don't care, but when you have, like in this case, improve the performance, 2,700 people have voted for that.
So you're diluting the what is it? The oily chain, the oily wheel.
Yeah, what I would say is the ideas that matter the most to the most people are what we're looking for, and it gives us that paradigm. So
let's scroll down a bit and tell
Sure.
me a few other things that might have been a bit of a surprise to you.
Debug Lambda expressions.
Yep.
Very popular. Great to know. So that was another one that.
So all about link, eh?
Is that one link?
Well, essentially.
Is it? Okay. I will believe you. Let's see. This was an interesting one that trended recently. There's been a request to make a native IDE for native developers, managed IDE for managed developers. I think that probably is related to performance, but I can't say that for sure.
It could be about noise when you've got like so many toolbars and so much stuff. You typically just want to do one job and make a lot of it dilute or disappear. It could be about that.
And that's one of the things we're trying to do with Dev 11 is make it simpler. I guess I shouldn't say Dev 11, I should say Visual Studio V Next. That's the official term for it. Although everybody's calling it Dev 11. So.
That's right. I'm calling it TFS and Visual Studio 2012.
All right.
That's my prediction.
Okay. I have no comment on that, of course.
Of course. So that's essentially C++ ones.
Yeah, there's a lot of C++ ones at the top. The C++ community has been active on the site, which is great because we haven't heard as much from them on the Connect site recently. So it's really good to see, a lot of things from them.
That's because C++ guys don't have bugs; they just work around them.
Yes, I will let you stand with your comment there.
All right, so let's take us through a few other ones near the top.
It's kind of nice, by the way, you can categorize these things. So our teams actually have people that own each of these. So what I've asked people to do is when someone says, hey, we want a category for C#, okay, I need you to own the top whatever ideas that come in there. So if I roll down through these a little bit further, rename a project to TFS. Oh my
goodness, yes. So that's got to be the number one TFS one.
Maybe I need to look and see, but that's been a very popular one.
Do you want to filter on TFS? Yeah. Why not?
So if I go up here and I filter on TFS, it is indeed.
It was number one.
So it's the number one thing voted.
I can tell you it's the number one thing my clients tell me.
Siddharth is actually saying, hey, we're taking another look. And I hope people can see this. It's kind of nice.
It is awesome because
we were not headed down that path, and now you can see.
Because I've asked for that for many years, and they say, technically it's quite difficult. Well, now they know it's not just me.
And what's nice is we can say, you know what, our TFS audience, this is the most popular thing. This is what they want. Yeah. So suddenly that jumps to the top is a very important thing. Part of the reason I went with this user voice, we had a conference about a year ago where we went in just to Microsoft people from the field, and we asked them, what are you hearing from your customers? And we actually wrote out requests and cut lines, and I asked the teams, where did you get these? Where did you get your defaults for this? And they said, oh, we just talked to a few people. And I said, no. We need something that lets the whole world come in and vote on it. And so that's what we do with user voice. Anyone can come in here, sign in with a Facebook account or Gmail or whatever, and you get 10 votes and you spread them out among your ideas. So one difference between this and Connect, you have unlimited voting, so technically it's very easy for people to campaign an idea. So, like, well, I won't call out there was a recent one that got a very high number of votes based on a campaign through a series of user groups where everybody went in and spent votes because you have unlimited single votes. So,
so with this one, if I ask all my VS mates to do something, if they give me a vote on what I'm wanting, then they're losing their own vote.
That's right. They're losing one of their 10 votes.
That's right.
So it's really nice. We like it. It's been very successful, and while the public will not see this, I've been in repeated planning sessions where people will make a point and they go, and it's the number 4 idea on user voice, and it grabs the room, and we know that's a high priority. So it very much is driving direction.
So I remember some years ago when Guthrie got up on stage and he said, all right, I'm announcing Silverlight 3, I think it was. And this is Silverlight today. Look at user voice. This new version of Silverlight nails 8 out of the top 10 on user voice. You should have heard everyone go crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was very tangible.
That's we like that because it does. I mean, if I go visit a customer site and they're very angry about something or they're very energetic about something, they may be the only one in the world that feels that way. And if we go pour the resources in, do we solve the larger problem for people? So this really gives us a chance to have a better discoverability. By the way, one of the responses we have, because performance is the top rated, if I click on top overall, we have just started a performance site that we stood up specifically to tell people.
Oh, wow. I was about to get to this.
Yeah. So
how you broke this down. So
we started off by seeding it with the top, I think it was top 8 things that we've been seeing through a tool called Perf Watson that we had put out.
And so what's number 1? Start up and shut down faster. Interesting.
Yeah, that's the hottest. Let's see if it's
that
the
is
top.
what I wouldn't have cared about.
Actually, make solutions load faster is the top one right now in terms of votes.
So loading, people care about the load.
Yeah, obviously it's hardware specific, but this is going to allow us to go in and say, we have made a commitment. We're gonna make performance better. We already have in some cases, and you'll see that some in build because we've had some of this data. But we wanted to be able to say, this is what people care the most about, and make sure that we're doing the right things. And, kind of like with the TFS item, we may say, oh, wow, this is the most important thing. Let's redirect our energy there. And so it's not that I don't want to go so far as to say we're committed to solving these. We may be able to come up and say, we honestly can't solve this one. It's not a solvable problem.
Or it's just too expensive.
It's just so expensive. Yeah. But this gives us so much better perspective, and the commitment we have with this is whatever rolls out as the top, I believe it's going to be the top 10, we're going to make a statement on each of them.
Awesome.
Or what we're going to do one way or the other.
Well, that's awesome to hear. I might ask you how you broke these down, because I know when you started this up you had one for TFS and one for Visual Studio, and then you rolled them in. What was the thinking behind what you were doing there and why you did that?
Well, we initially started it, the TFS team actually came to me and said we'd like to go ahead and spin up a user voice site for TFS in the cloud, the thing that they've been previewing. And so we were actually experimenting with the site at that point, and we call it the pro team, the non-TFS side of the house was interested but not as ready to roll forward. And so we were going to try the TFS one. And then right after that went out, when Brian blogged about it, it got a lot of coverage quickly. Yeah. And then the pro team, or the non-TFS side, said, hey, we want that too. And we put it out, and and I'll take the blame for it. I put the second one out, and almost immediately some of the TFS guys said, why is there 2? And I said, I'll sort the ideas. Because technically it's 2, but realistically...
there's a lot of crossover.
Yeah, and so we...
What's an example of a crossover?
I have to think. Honestly, performance is a pretty good example of a crossover. Right. But, so I would say that the first piece of feedback we got was one user voice site. So we adapted. I took a night and copied those silly things over by hand because it was I got to own it. And now we have one.
Very nice. Oh, well, that's fantastic. Is there anything else worth talking about, Doug?
I'll mention real quickly, Connect is out here, still there. Connect has had, a bit of a checkered reputation over the years. When I got into this role, it had been a little bit dated. A lot of people, had poured a lot of effort into Connect. It predated social media, which is one of the, I would call it a limitation. We built it. It's more in a maintenance mode now. We had suggestions and bugs on there. I went ahead and moved the suggestions over to user voice. We're still filing bugs there. I hope people will see we're making a concerted effort to respond to bugs, and that has been, I actually watch for what bugs are not responded to and run a report against it. The numbers have come way down, so I know people have said Connect is a black hole. It has been in some cases. That's not intentional. It's just some aging systems and a lot of segments in the systems. It's being cleaned up. At this point, you should get a response to your bugs in about 2 weeks. Now, maybe we're not going to fix it, but you should at least hear that.
Right.
And we're getting closer to that. I'd say we're probably at about 90% response now, and we're working to get that all the way to 100.
Well, that's good to hear it's still alive.
Mm-hmm.
So, closing off, Doug, I'd love to ask you, what is a person or a book or something like that has inspired you?
Yeah,
Got you going?
there's a couple. Probably the one I most like, and the guy that I most mentored, if you will, virtually by is Andy Stanley.
Can you Google it?
I can't. Well, I can ping him. I won't Google him. Let me get off of this fine side of yours.
Oh, yes. Do you like my suggestions?
I love your suggestions. Andy Stanley, he is actually a pastor. I guess we can Wikipedia the guy and hope that whoever typed this was accurate. He is actually a pastor of a church that's about 40,000 members, but he really loves to spill over into business. And he does something very similar to the evangelism role I've done for so long, which is he has an audience of 40,000 and an online audience in the millions, and he prepares and delivers content to them on a weekly basis. And he has set up systems and great thinking around how to do that.
So he has two streams. He has religious podcasts and business podcasts.
Yeah, and I resonate on both sides of that, so I'm okay with it.
All right, awesome.
But even people who are not faith-driven, it's good business leadership skills. So he is one of the ones I really like and follow. One example of that, he has a book called Communicating for a Change, where he talks about a single point message. If you try to make 4 points, you won't make any because no one will remember them. Or
Too many choice, yeah.
So you try to drive everything around a single point. That kind of thing, it's very appealing. It's very practical and very appealing.
Yeah.
So
I have seen them talk about a study they did in, nothing to do with this guy, but a similar principle, when they had these jams in a supermarket, and you taste a little bit of them, and you choose, and they were selling them, and then they did one where they put 24, and people would try so many, and then they never bought anything. Too much choice, and they couldn't make a choice. So similar to too many points, you can't remember a point.
Yeah. So that's one example. He has a lot of great principles that I like to follow.
Any other books or?
Another guy that I really like, and our team recently did a study on, Patrick Lencioni, has a book called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team.
Can you just Google that?
Yeah.
I'll bing it?
I'll bing it, of course, absolutely. I should have his book here, but I don't. And we'll stick with the fine Wikipedia there.
There it is.
There's a picture of a caution sign, but so Patrick has written a series of good books, but The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, he talks about what are the 5 things that typically cause a team to have failures. And it's things like lack of trust, lack of clear stated goals. I should be able to rattle off all 5.
Yeah, I was going to see if you can remember all 5.
I'll have to cheat and look since you've got me kind of going against the camera and trying to think at the same time. But it's really good. I found it to be really applicable, and I've actually found it to be very good for a self-evaluation, because I look at those and I say, do I have an absence of trust in a relationship, and is that sabotaging it? So it's basically says what keeps teamwork from happening.
And it applies to personal life and your marriage as well?
Yeah, it does.
Interesting.
Personal life as well as business life.
Right. Well, I've got some homework for you, Doug. You need to reread that. Remember what they all are.
You should have told me before you started the camera. I would have rattled them off very intelligently. So
all right.
That's right. That's a piece of feedback I will take to heart.
So thanks, Doug, for giving us a look at User Voice and Connect. Okay. That was awesome. And
thank you, Michelle, for holding the camera.
And with that, this is Adam Cogan signing off until next time. Before you go, I've got a task for you. Go to tv.ssw.com and subscribe to our newsletter. You'll be informed of all upcoming videos. In addition, if you're super keen, I'm all about inspecting and adapting. So send me an email or send me a tweet @Adam Cogan. Cheers.